What happens between being a really good student and being a nurse who seems to be struggling? One of the things that I saw happening a lot were students who were very good in the clinicals and classroom setting would become very frustrated and have a very hard time with orienting to the critical care units and med-surg units and other units as well. So what I did was a qualitative research, and I interviewed several people who had all been a nurse for about a year. They were able to share their stories with me of the struggles and the triumphs and the things they experienced during that year time period.
And so what were some similarities between their socialization?
One was I had asked them to share a story, and it could be any story they wanted to share. Every single participant talked about their first code and how fearful they were. It was fast-paced. They didn't know what they were doing. So this was something that was really big for all of them. Some of them questioned why they became a nurse. Some said they went home and cried. It was just a very traumatic experience for them. But one of the things I thought was interesting was they also talked about codes that they had maybe a year later. After they had grown, they could really tell that they had improved and became better nurses. And they used that later code as sort of a measure of how well they had progressed.
Did it seem to matter whether or not if the first code was a good outcome or a bad outcome?
I don't think the outcome was that significant. It was more the nurses were judging themselves. The big challenges with those first codes were these nurses were expecting to function like a nurse who is an expert. And that's not going to happen when you're a brand new grad. Whereas as the later codes, they were more competent. They had progressed, moving toward proficiency, competence. They were able to handle it much better.
The more accomplished nurses, how can they make that transition a little easier for the new grads?
That's a really, really challenging question. One of the other things that came up in the research was bullying. So there were some participants who felt that they had been bullied, and there were participants who said they weren't really bullied, but they had seen it happening to others. So we still have the problem of experienced nurses eating their young. We still have a culture where a lot of the established, experienced nurses might take an attitude of, well, let me see if you're really good. You have to prove yourself. So there's still that big challenge that we need to work on. And I know there have been several articles published talking about how to make your workplace better, how to get people to get along better. And one of the things that I would like to challenge the experienced nurses is to hold back on your criticism of the new nurses. You need to be patient with these new nurses. You need to allow them the opportunity to grow. And sometimes that takes a lot of work. When I'm precepting someone, sometimes it's easier for me to just jump in there and do it myself. It takes time to be able to explain and show and educate. And we need to be able to do that. And we who have experience need to be mentors and help people along.
On allnurses.com, we get this discussion quite frequently of nurses eating their young or not, or the new nurse is just too sensitive, and that's not bullying. So it's kind of a both sides of the story. So how would you suggest that the new nurse handle that?
So I think a couple things for the new grad is open, honest communication, and don't have impossible goals. for yourself. I've seen a couple things happen. I've seen the new nurse who is afraid to make a mistake and afraid to let their preceptor know they may not know how to do a procedure, or they may not how to do charting or whatever skill. So they sort of hide. And that can be a roadblock to good communication and establishing a good mentoring relationship. You need to be able to say, I went over this in school, but I'm not real confident. Can you walk me through? Can you help me this first time? And you do have to be open to getting a little bit of criticism and being able to take that criticism, analyze it, and learn from it and improve what you do later on.
How do nurses develop coping skills?
A lot of it is experience. The more codes you have, the better you become at participating in them. A lot of hospitals are now having sim labs as part of orientation. Even if a hospital doesn't have a sim lab, you can do mock scenarios. So you could do a mock code where you have people doing the roles that you would see in a real code. You can do mock codes for a rapid intubation, or you could do mock codes on a med-surg unit of what would you do if your patient suddenly started to have chest pain, whether it's with the high-end equipment in a simulation lab or with mannequins or participants or volunteers. I think the key for that is you're learning the role, you're learning the action, and you are processing and you are getting better at it. The other thing for new nurses, don't sit back and watch. If there's a code or a procedure going in a room, even if it's not your patient, see if you can go in there and you can watch and you can see what's going on and how it flows. Or can you jump in there and be a participant? So don't back away from things. Get in there and get experience.
Sounds like experience helps to build one's confidence.
Unfortunately, the only way you can get experience is by going in, doing things. I do that a lot with my students. When I have them in clinical, they're like, I don't know how to do this. I'm like, yes, you did. You did it in lab. You did fine. But I don't know. We're going in and doing it.
We're going to do it.
And usually
become more comfortable with it.
Once they do something the first time, they're like, I got it.